Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om, I bow to the Lord Vasudeva. Joy to you, friends. I'm going to read stanza 19. We're in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. O Bharata, Arjuna, there is one self dwelling in all. That self is inviolable. Grieve not for anything. Oh, that's the wrong stanza, I'm sorry. Bookmark in the wrong place. One who considers his true and eternal self to be the slayer of anything, and who believes that he himself in essence can be slain, does not know the truth. The true self can neither slay nor be slain. Now these truths are valid on many levels. If your duty, and there are times in life when warfare and battle are necessary. It's sometimes necessary to kill people. I mentioned the case of somebody who comes into your village, let's say, and starts shooting everybody. Gandhi's answer to that was, well, I'd just offer myself. Well, what if he kills you and then goes on and kills everybody else? That's not an answer. You have to understand that there are some times when all these realities apply. On their own level, it is right to slay, but it's important to understand that you're not slaying, so that you don't slay with hatred, with animosity. You are non-violent in your heart, but you have to assume that in order to accomplish what you have to do. One time my guru was scolding a woman disciple, and one of the men, Gene Haupt, his name was, an older man, was sitting in the room at the opposite side of the room. And the way Yogananda was scolding that woman, you'd have thought the roof would fly off. But every time he turned his back to her and looked at Gene, he was striding up and down the room. And every time he looked at Gene, he'd wink and have a merry smile and he'd turn back. But he had to act that part in order for the woman to take him seriously. And so there are many times when we have to consciously act a part in not to be hypocritical, but to get our point across. Now this is true and can be used in many different levels. For example, you have your work to do. You know that it's not real, but you have to do it well. If you don't do it well, it's like going to school. If you don't learn your lessons, you have to repeat those lessons. You have to repeat a whole year maybe. And you'll never get out of school until you manage to pass your exams. So in your lifetime, in your life work too, you must do a good job. But the interesting thing is that, see, there are two attitudes. One is, well, it's not real, so I don't care how I do it. But that won't help you. You have to understand each level of reality on its own level. And until you can do a good job on that level, you won't be able to graduate to a higher level. It says in the Gita that to reach the actionless state, you must be intensely active for God. This was the teaching of my gurus. And so when you act for God, don't just sort of do it as some devotees will teach. Don't think of it as real and just do it sort of with half your mind. You've got to do it as well as you can, but always, Master said that the spiritual path is like running races and doing stunts on the way. So what you've got to do is learn to do as good a job as possible, and yet always keep in mind that it's not a real thing. You're not bound by it. The Gita finally teaches a fantastic teaching for this. It says, act, but don't be attached to the personal fruits of your action. Don't be attached personally to the fruits of your action. Nishkam karma is the word. So this is what I have found, that as long as I'm trying to do a good job and I'm worried about the results, then my mind is sort of divided. I can't do as good a job as I can do if I do it entirely from my own center. So concentrating and getting completely in tune with your subject, you will find that in doing that. For example, when I was in college, I took one semester of music composition. I didn't go to class. I didn't do any assignments. And before the exam, I remember sitting on the, you might say, well, you should have done better in college. But my mind was on God by then and on truth. I just couldn't think about all these things that were intended to help me get a good career when I had no desire to have a career. I just wanted to know truth. Anyway, that's all beside the point. I remember sitting on the steps of the building in which students were going to take the exam, and I was hastily going through the thing, looking for the bold-faced lettering so I could learn those principles. That's really all the studying I did for composition. It was an interesting thing because they wanted in the exam to have us write a melody for a figured bass. And all of a sudden, this beautiful melody came into my mind. It was a very oriental-sounding melody. And the professor liked the melody so well, he gave me a passing grade, but he couldn't pass me for the course. I hadn't done any work. Well, the thing, though, is that when I tuned into that bass, suddenly I could do it. And I have found since then, I have written a lot of music, but I found that by tuning in to what I want to say, and then asking the divine to flow through me, then everything works out well. And in any work that you do, if you don't think of it as a reality, realize that the reality is subtler, and you're just acting in this world but trying to manifest that subtlety, you get in tune with that particular state of consciousness. You know, I think it's the same inspiration that a scientist would get as Einstein did. They say that when he discovered the law of relativity, he did it in a flash. And then he spent 10 years trying to explain this in such a way that others would be able to understand what that inspiration was and be convinced by it. And in science, that same inspiration came to him as E = mc squared. It could come to a poet in the terms of beautiful poetry, to a painter in terms of beautiful colors and forms, to a businessman in terms of how to get ahead in the stock market. There are people who tune into any field. You know, I don't like rock music at all, I have to confess. But when I heard Michael Jackson sing once, I had to admit he was completely in tune with what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. He was expressing that music with absolutely the right rhythm. I had to take my hat off to him in that one. So whatever level of reality you're dealing with, deal with it as a level of reality. Be completely in tune with it, but be removed from it also, realizing that it's only an expression of the infinite. The more you can understand that you're expressing the infinite and not just that level of reality, the more you will find that things go well for you in every field. Joy to you.